Merci beaucoup pour votre temps. Hein. C'est un grand plaisir. Mais je pense que c'est meilleur en anglais.
C'est bon pour moi. Voilà.
Pour l'audience.
Yeah, it's for me it's a basic English, but technical. Normally it will be fine. Yeah.
Okay. Well, before we start, I wrote down some questions for you that I'm very curious about. I've been enjoying your champagne for years now. Raquel knows well, and all the people at Anima that I'm a big fan of your work. And so I wrote down some questions, but before I go into them, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself and the domain and the work that you do?
Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks, Thomas. And I think it's always nice that people follow our wines since sometimes a long time, since sometime recently. And I think it's, for me, again, as a winemaker, wine grower, of course, the main important part of our job is always to take care about our vines, to make a very good winemaking, try to make the best wine as possible. But it's also important to share our ideas, our philosophy. So this is why it's good also to meet some people, to discover also some country that we have some very good ambassadors and talking a bit more about the technique. So for me, I'm Aurélien. I'm the 7th generation of this family domain. So maybe it's a bit of pressure on my shoulder, you know, but
yeah,
at the end, I'm quite super happy working, but continue to work with this family domain. You know, I always like the idea you never own your terroir, your vines.
Yeah.
You received from the previous generation, you try to work as best as possible and then try to transmit for the next generation, possibly in better condition. So that's for me what I try to do. So now this is like 20 years I'm in charge of the domain.
Okay.
But so on the beginning, for sure, it was a lot of works and reflection with my parents. And when I arrived at the domain, for me, I think the important thing was really try to express as possible the terroir for Champagne. You know, Champagne, maybe it's a name, it's a wine quite famous because of the big brands that did a lot of good job to spread the name Champagne everywhere. And for me, Champagne, it's also the terroir. The terroir, this is the chalk, that's the north climate in France. So that gives you a very good finesse, precision, complexity. So it was a reflection from my part. The 13 hectares of vine that we have in 11 different villages across the Champagne area. So that's a lot of diversity. And for me, I really was happy to try to present as best as possible this kind of diversity. Champagne, most of the people, you know, Champagne, they know it because it's Brut or Blanc de Blanc or vintage. But I think you already know that there is more details. And I think we are there today to try to explore the different possibility of Champagne, the creativity, the lieu-dit vintages wines, etc., etc.
Perfect. And so you said you started working at the domain 20 years ago, yeah?
Yeah, I was 21. So 21 years old. Maybe you are a bit young. You are maybe full of ideas, sometimes crazy ideas. But, you know, it's important that it's always works for long term. So when you arrive, I think it's good to start quite when you are young, because you need maybe a few years, 5 years, probably, to understand the potential that you have, what you received. Then you need another 5-10 years to understand what you want to do, with what kind of changement, you know, because the viticulture, the vine growing takes time. Probably when you do the pruning, we are working with the organic biodynamic practices, etc. So that's something which is probably important for the season, the coming harvest, but it will be even more important for the next 10 years, 20 years. So this is why you have to really understand what is your vision. So now I could say that because it's 20 years that I made the changement, and I'm now quite happy with the results.
But when you started taking more responsibility at the domain, what was maybe your first decision, or one of the first decisions that made maybe your parents or your grandfather or the people that came before you look at you and be like, I'm not too sure?
Yeah, you know, Champagne was not necessarily the most natural vine growing region in the world.
Right.
And this, I'm not critic, because, you know, Champagne, we will not make all the history, but Champagne was touched a lot by World War II. My grandparents in the years 50 to 70, it was really hard moments, very difficult. So they tried to do, in fact, from their best. Then my parents arrived, and it was more this kind of not a revolution, but all the modernity, also a bit of the herbicide, this kind of tools for the production. Maybe they use it a bit too much in the extreme way. And our generation, I think we are really between these two possibilities, traditional and modernity. And for me, my job is really to take the best of the both worlds. Working with tradition, we do ploughing by horse, we have vinification in barrels, but also the use of the modernity. For example, the riddling, everything is doing by machine. So when I arrive, for me, I say, okay, what we have, I think the best treasury for us, it's the terroir. And for me, the changement was really the increasing of the precision in the vine growings. So no use of herbicide, the pesticide. Again, this kind of works as to try to have as natural as possible a good vine growing in order to express the terroir, in order to have a better maturity. And then you adapt your vinification to get, of course, a sparkling wine, but a wine with a strong identity. Not necessarily the identity for myself, but the identity for the harvest, for the vintage, for the terroir, if it's a clay or chalk, etc., and the different varieties. So that was the challenge. My father, I remember that he said, "Oh, these plots, I made a mistake. The Pinot Noir are never very good and not so ripe." It was in 2006. We changed a lot of things, the ploughing, the shorter pruning, etc. In 08, harvest 08, we tasted the still wines, the Vaclair, and he said, "Well, Aurélien, I don't recognize the wines." So it was really, for me, it's always what happens in the vines. That's for me one of the key. I always try to explain for the people that today making good wine is not difficult. Making good grapes, possibly natural good grapes, that's the challenge. And then when you have a good base with the grapes, everything is a bit easier in the winery.
Because people often call La Frère as part of the progressive wave in Champagne. Do you agree?
I'm a guy which have some ideas, but it's always evolution. I think we did some progression during the last 20 years for sure. I don't know how the next 20 years will be, but for sure, each time when I arrive at the domain and I decide to make 100% Pinot Meunier. So right. I think now for you today, at this time, Pinot Meunier seems to be interesting to taste and very good.
Yes.
But imagine that 20 years ago, we were not so many, and it was a bit challenging for me, for the few growers that we were. It was with Benoît Tarlan, Fabrice Pouillon, Raphaël Berech, Alexandre Stoll, all of these guys. We were with a very strong idea, and I think it was with this ambitious to present the champagne in another way.
Okay.
And I think so. This is why, as you say, we are very progressive, because now we are working also with all variety, the Timelier, Arban, Pinot Blanc.
Right.
We are making some wine without sulfites. We are making some perpetual reserve. We are now recently we changed a lot of things in the winery with concrete tanks for the reserve wines, etc., etc.
I'll go back to the Meunier because you mentioned it, and I have a question about that. So, what is the metric that you use most for picking? Because how do you say now we pick? Is it more sugar, pH, total acidity, phenolic ripeness, taste of the juice, skin texture? Sometimes for Meunier, what is the driving factor for you for the time of picking?
Alors, first important, because where we are located in the Côte au Sud d'Épernay is like a crossroad between Marne Valley and Côte des Blancs. So we have different type of terroir, and where we are able to grow the three main varieties: Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier. So that means that for the picking, for the schedule, it's really, really challenging. Because if you have just one variety in one village, that makes the things a bit easier. But for me, really, the quality for the harvest, it's really depend about the schedule. So, Pinot Meunier starts the period of maturation a bit earlier than the Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, but then it's finished very slow.
Right.
Pinot Noir, Chardonnay start late, but after increase the maturity. You could go at 0.3 potential alcohol per day. Then the Meunier, it will be maximum 0.1. Pinot Meunier, you have the skin very fragile. Pinot Meunier, you are really taking care that I don't want that it's going, I mean, not too ripe, but in a jammy way. You know, when this is a fragile variety.
Right.
For me, what I love with Pinot Meunier is all the aromatic nuances.
Right, but you need to preserve the acidity, so you need to find a...
So for the acidity, you have the tartaric acidity that you have inside of the grapes, but then, for me, the most important, you have the taste of the acidity coming from the choke. Right. And as we are in the Coteaux Sud d'Épernay, near the Côte des Blancs, so we have a soil quite choky, even if the Meunier are quite high in maturity, you have this kind of salinity, freshness coming from the terroir. So this is why, for me, the viticulture permits us, even with, for example, 25, the vintage we have picked a few months ago, the Meunier was so rich, so impressive in terms of alcohol, fruitness. But when you taste it, it's always the focus and the finesse coming from the terroir. Then I think the Pinot Meunier is really more challenging and more difficult than the Chardonnay or the Pinot Noir. You don't have to go too much with the yield. You have to work really harder with the soil to try to find a very good balance in terms of energy, vigor, etc. And then you have to adapt also, I think, your winemaking.
Okay.
The aging of the lees, for example, the idea is not necessarily to have too much of the steering of the lees. Sometimes you have to take care about the oxidative profile, but it depends about the different type of soil, etc.
Okay.
To finish for that, today, I think with the climate change, I will not say global warming, but more climate change. The problem is that we have a big difference between technologic maturity and phenolic maturity. You understand that?
Yes.
The Chardonnay could be, the Pinot Meunier, sorry, could be very ripe, very fruity, but with sometimes not too much alcohol. It was the case for Harvest 23. And this year, the maturity in terms of potential of alcohol, it was a lot of sugar, but the taste was not there. So it's always finding the balance. You know, it's like what happens now, for example, in the Barolo. They have to wait quite longer go at 16 because the phenolic maturity is not in place. So they have to wait.
Right.
It's not just to find more alcohol. Huh? It's just that the idea of the phenolic maturity in time.
And still on the Meunier, from what I read, you have some old vines of Meunier that were planted from previous generations.
For the oldest vines we have, Les Vignes d'Autrefois, it's a cuvée that we are doing from these vines. It's planted 1947. So this is by my old grandparents.
Okay.
And this is why I'm always saying you have to be very humble and very ambitious in the same time. Humility, because this is my old grandparents who decided to plant this Sélection Massale of Pinot Meunier. There is also a bit of the vines without rootstock because it was done by a Provinage. So then my grandparents, my parents continue to taking care about these vines. And for me, I arrive at the 4th generation to try to do the best with this old vine of Meunier.
And how do you think the old vines compare to the new vines when you have a very difficult vintage?
It is not, it's a bit of cliche, but you know, the comparison between the vines and the humans, sometimes you understand what I mean?
Yes, totally.
These old vines, I think they have in memory inside of their roots.
The knowledge, the experience.
They arrive, it's always the balance. Of course, the young vines, sometimes when there is a vintage season very rainy, the yield will be quite big, the maturity will be challenging, but the old vines always arrive to manage to adapt. So it's always the balance. But talking about old vines, you know that for me, all the vines planted before the year 70, That's super interesting because this is in the period of the year 70. That's the apparition of the clone. The clone is a good fruit with making good leaves, good grapes, good maturity, and after you do multiplication. So in the year 70, 80, people was looking more for production. So today, the vines from the years 80, for example, you could consider that it's old vines because it's more than 40 years old. But in fact, for me, now what we are doing at the domain is that we replace these vines. All the plots planted before the year 70, we keep it, we preserve it.
Okay.
But sometimes the vines, old vines of Meunier from the year planted in, I don't know, 75, 85, etc. We prefer to replace and restart with new Sélection Massale of Pinot Meunier. And here, I think when you have also a good base of the good genetic with good diversity of Pinot Meunier, and if you do, for example, it's like the education of the kids. It's always important to taking care on the beginning. And after that, normally you could have some good surprise.
Good, good. And so I'm going to transition to winemaking because now I'm curious about the winemaking and the reserve wines and some of the Solera. So how do you decide which base wines go into stainless steel, which go into Foudre, which one go into barrel? And is it by grape, by parcel, by vine, by vintage? How do you decide that?
All the things all the details you mentioned, that's have to make your choice. I think it's also the knowledge that you have vintage after vintage. For me, one of the most interesting and passionate things in what we are doing is when you arrive to make the connection between the vines and the wines. When you are in the winery, you are tasting these plots, these vines of Chardonnay, and you remember the works you did, all the season and the yield, the maturity, etc. When you are in the vines, you are making your pruning or you are doing the plowing of the soil and you see all the nutrition. You could remember the wines from the previous vintage, and after you arrive to adapt. So today the domain, it's like 70% of the wines fermented and aged in oak. By oak, it means the barrels from Burgundy, 3 to 30 years old. Then we have some food of 50 hectoliters. We have some tronconic tanks as well. And then we used to have a bit of stainless steel, but now we are more concrete tanks because the concrete, I think, is giving more freshness, digestibility especially for the reserve wines. So, for example, talking about the Pinot Meunier, like plots of Meunier we decide to pick today. We take the juice. You have maybe a look of the analysis, but for me, this is the feeling of what you have in terms of sensation, fruitness, energy, and then you will select 10 barrels. I love the diversity. But for Pinot Meunier, for example, usually I prefer to work more with barrels of 20 years than 3-5 years old.
Okay.
Because I feel that the Meunier, usually it's a variety a little bit more expressive, fruity. So with the old barrels, you try to maintain this kind of elegance, finesse.
Okay. Okay. And and you work with all 7 permitted grapes in Champagne. You have a famous Cuvée Lesset.
Yeah.
And so my question to you is, which one of the less traditional, or I'm going to say forgotten grapes, Arbonne, Petit Meslier, and so on, which one do you think has perhaps a future in the region? Like, which one of these grapes do you think in 5 to 10 years the next generation is going to be talking about, if any?
I'm super happy that with this question, because that's something, when we decide to replant this, we have the plots that for the Cuvée Lesset, it's all the 7 grape variety planted together, a field blend. We did it with my father in 2003, because this is the family heritage. That's also the history of Champagne, so it's really important to preserve it. We didn't know what will be the result. And now, if you tasted already the set, you could feel that there is a lot of complexity, energy, variation, etc. Because it's also it's not the magic things, but that's the result of a combination of different variety, different vintages. But for sure, when we tasted the grapes only from the different varieties, there is really one that we fall in love. This is the Petit Meslier.
Okay.
Petit Meslier, just for the people who want to know a bit more of the genetic of this variety, it's a cross of Gouais Blanc and Savagnin. Savagnin, you know it from the Jura. The Gouais Blanc is an old variety, white neutral variety. That was is the mother, in fact, of the Chardonnay. Gouais Blanc and Pinot Noir, 350 years ago, Chardonnay. Gouais Blanc and Savagnin, in the same period, they created the Petit Meslier. So the Petit Meslier today, for me, what I love, richness, like the pineapple fruit character, very tropical, but most important, very good freshness, energy. That's a variety so lively. In terms of pH, for example, I don't know if it's with the numbers you will understand, but this year it was maybe like 11.5 of natural alcohol.
Oh, okay.
Then it was 7.5 of total acidity. And the pH we were at on the juice, it was 2.80. So voilà.
Wow.
It's a strong variety.
Yes.
So for me, it's a bit of cliche. It's not necessarily working all the time, but sometimes the things from the past could be used for the future. And Petit Meslier, it's for me, I feel we are today, we need growers to have a lot of hopes with this kind of variety. I really feel that it's useful for us today, but as you say, in the near future, but 10, 20 years ago, it will be really important. Petit Meslier, you have the guys like Olivier Oriot, Étienne Calsac, Aurélien Lurquin, Emilien Feneuil, and now a few more. But it's a very strong choice that we did. I convinced a bit my family also because I really love the Petit Meslier. Today, we have on the total of the 13 hectares, we have 1 hectare of Petit Meslier. So it's like more than 7% of the full domain.
Right.
Usually what my friends say, you have half of the friends say that I'm crazy, but the other part say I'm a genius. So you make a mix and you are near the truth.
Right. I'm a huge fan of Petit Meslier. I'm a huge fan. Not only for Champagne, but also for Coteau. You know, I think I was with Lurquin 2 weeks ago. I was in his house, and I think his Coteau is magnificent. And Emmanuel Feneuil, I also visited, and I think his Coteau from Meslier is amazing. And my question to you is, and when it comes to planting the Petit Meslier, is it very different in terms of planting density or pruning than Chardonnay, for example?
This is what is very not boring but very frustrating, is that it's an old variety, but as it was forgotten, we don't have enough experience and knowledge.
Okay.
We have to restart. So this is why that with Aurélien, with Olivier Oriot, with Étienne Calsac, we have to share our ideas and try to make some different experimentation. What we did, for example, in terms of winemaking, because we would like to know how the Petit Meslier could match with other variety. So we did some maceration of Petit Meslier and Pinot Noir.
Okay.
Then we did a press of Petit Meslier and Chardonnay together. Maybe you tasted the Coteau from Aurélien Les Forcières, which is Chardonnay and Petit Meslier. That's a lovely wine. So yeah, you have to restart. You have to the same with the terroir, the pruning. For me, I try to make a things that I feel is interesting and having a good respect for this variety. But also there is some other friends who are working a bit differently. And then together, it's like a small community. We try to make the experience and say, I feel that it works well like that. Again, in winery, we did some barrels without topping, you know, like a bit in the oxidative profile to see how the Petit Meslier could work.
Nice. And I love the idea of experimenting with new grapes and moving away from the boxed, you know, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Meunier. Maybe now some people know about it more, thankfully, because I also love the grapes. But yeah, Arbonne also is very nice. Oriot did a really good job also with the cuvées that are 100% Arbonne, 100% Meslier. To me, that's a very good project as well. So if speaking of the future, if Champagne had to redo the hierarchy from scratch, which villages do you think today, or that you work with, are undervalued and should be placed higher in the hierarchy of Champagne?
That's a question. I think I couldn't get just one answer because first, you don't know how the future will be. The world is too full of interrogation. But just talking about the weather, it's really hard to say. In 10 years, it will be like that. For me, you have always to make an average. And again, we had recently we had some extreme vintages. 21 was super difficult, like a bit like 24. 25 was again one of the recent vintages. We started harvest late August, etc. So, for example, recently we just had the opportunity to get the acquisition of a new plots of Chardonnay that we decided to buy. It was on the top of the hill, near the forest, west exposition, and quite fresh and humid. 15 years ago, 15 years before, I was saying, no, I don't want this kind of Chardonnay because it will be too difficult to be ripe. Today, I think it's a really good advantage because it's a fresher climate. It takes maybe 3, 4, 5 days more in terms of ripening. And that's super interesting to have some Chardonnay very elegant and precise to age as a reserve wines. So again, you know, for me, the terroir, I think, I don't know if you agree with that, but the terroir, there is no bigger or worse terroir. The terroir is just how the growers are able, with a lot of energy and sometimes the time, to reveal the potential. So this is why today in Champagne, even if you think, okay, you have the Grand Cru, Ménil-sur-Roger for the Chardonnay, Bouzy for the Pinot Noir. We have some plots in Bouzy. Of course, this is really nice terroir. But we discover some Pinot Noir with north exposition, with a lot of clay in our village in Chabot. And all the details we changed the last 10 years. Now, I will not say that this Pinot Noir could compete to the Pinot Noir from Bouzy. It's different style, different profile. But for me, again, it's how you are able to try to understand the potential of these plots and try to give a good vinoring and good vinification.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of vinification, when you taste your Vin Clair, what are you looking for exactly that would never show on a tech sheet? What are you tasting for the Vin Clair that you're looking for?
We taste the Vin Clair several times during the vinification, for sure. And after, of course, one day you have to put everything on the table. The domain is almost 70, 80 different Vin Clair still wines. And then you have to do a blend, or you have to do Lieu-dit single vineyard cuvées. I'm not looking to try to, does it taste the white peach or the pear? For me, that's not the problem. Is it question of balance, of energy? Is it the wines open and enjoyable now? Or is it the wines a bit strict and needs a bit more time? Because, you know, I always try to explain, to make the difference between the works that we are doing as a wine grower, winemaker, and the works of the chef. The chef, he cooks every day, and the result he presents immediately. And you have every day the lunch, the dinner, etc. For us, we have one service per year, is the harvest. And then you have to wait 3, 4, 5 years before presenting to the market the result. So thinking that, okay, this Vin Clair is tasting so good is not necessarily the best bottles in 5 years. You understand? The Vin Clair, you need to have this kind of finesse, precision, not too open, not too generous, because after, in Champagne, we have the second fermentation in bottles, we have the aging on the lees, and the construction of the wines, you never know. But I think we know a bit, but not everything. And that's also what I really like, and I don't want to know everything.
Good, I like that. Always learning.
Yeah, I know.
And then as a wine critic, this is a question that I always like to make to winemakers, which is, if scores and points didn't exist and people only thought about wine in terms of pleasure at the table, which Laert Frères Cuvée do you think would be the most valued one?
I always give the same answer, is Ultradition. The Ultradition, this is the first wine we are producing. Today, you know, Thomas, we are producing between 12 to 15 different champagne. I don't know if it's really smart, but until now we have a lot of pleasure. And I think people like you, wine lovers, always like to discover a bit of the different wines from the domain. But, for example, Les Sept or Les Vignes d'Autrefois, it's quite easy to do. You have one plot, one press, 10 barrels, the blend is done. That's it. Ultradition, it's a works with the young vines, the old vines with different terroirs. It's a work with different possibility in winemaking. So it's a blend of 20, 25 different backlayers. You have different vintages, etc. And that represents today almost 40% of the production. So that's the wine, which is the first step to enter into the La Frère way, the middle. And I think I want that this wine, for the people who don't have the opportunity to drink champagne every month, if they open a bottle, they could find some pleasure without a lot of reflection. If the wine lovers want to take a lot of time, they will find the vinosity, the complexity, the influence from the terroir, the salinity. The sommelier, that could be the tradition. It's the bottle for the sommelier of the bistro that he could pour for very honest food by the glass. But that's the wine also could be served in a 3-star Michelin restaurant because it's a super complex. For me, this is the wine with a lot of versatility. You could use in a very different way. And Champagne, it's a wine that we were already talking that with the Anima Vinum team. It's a champagne. You could have it for the celebration. You could have it for. It seems to be a luxury product, but for me, I say with champagne, you don't need necessarily oyster. I mean, a good piece of bread, some cheese, Tuesday evening, that's fine. It works. And I think, no.
That's amazing. And is there because I just thought about this. We talked about always learning, obviously, that we don't know everything. Is there any parcel that you own that you feel you still haven't fully cracked, that you still haven't fully understood the parcel, the terroir from that specific parcel? Is there a parcel that is like a challenge for you that you're like, I always struggle with this one?
There is many, and I think for me, for sure, the life is too short to do all the experimentation and understand all the things you want to understand from. So you have to don't make too much experimentation, because after I think you will be maybe a bit lost. So there is some plots that I really convince the team to say, okay, we have to make some changement. We have to think a bit more about the possibility with the plowing. Now we are starting to make like a regenerative farming. We planted some cereals like beans, rye, radish, pois, mustard. I don't know if it's, I feel it's nice, but I hope it will change, for sure, it will change a bit the composition about our soil. It will create a bit more quality, more life. But I hope that the result will be that the vines will be in better condition, more healthy, and the grapes at the end will have a very good quality. So again, you have a lot of hopes, you have some certain ideas, but you have to be, again, I take this word, very humble, because that the result will be in 5 years, 10 years, that, okay, this choice that you did 10 years ago, is it good for now and for the future? So, for example, we decided to plant, it was in 21. So 4 years ago, a soil with just 20 centimeters of soft clay, and after the roots in the chalk. So here, this is very, very important terroir impact in terms of salinity. And what we did, we decided to replace the vines of Chardonnay with Chardonnay Muscaté. You know, you have the Chardonnay, you have the, it is not a cross. It's the Chardonnay is able to take the genetic of the Muscat. The Muscat, you know it's very rich, expressive, probably maybe too expressive for certain people. But here, when you take the Chardonnay, you have all the tropical fruit, the pineapple character, which is coming. And with the terroir, which is super chalky, I think it could make a good contrast, a good balance. So that was this year, the harvest 25, that was the first harvest. We had 5 barrels. So, of course, I'm very curious. But this, again, I decided to plant it because I'm convinced, I'm not sure that we want to make 100% Chardonnay Muscaté as a champagne. For me, it will be used mostly like, you know, a seasoning. Just 2, 4, 5% into the Blanc de Blanc, into Tradition, I don't know. But I'm sure that I hope it will be useful for the future. So we have to continue to make the progress to find how we could adapt the works in order that we say, okay, yes, it was a good decision. But you never know, huh?
You never right. And well, speaking of the future, I'm assuming you want your kids to be the next generation. I'm assuming you want the project to go within the family, assuming because you're a seventh generation already. So I don't know, but I'm assuming. And my question is about this. My question is about thinking about the next generation in your family. What are some things that you want to tell them and you think it's important for them to think about when they take your place?
It will be approximately the same that the education I received from my parents. We are farmers, so our feet have to stay on the ground. And now you see with the recent evolution, I mean the last 50 years, how the wine aspects could be very impressive, and the people are okay. They pay a lot of attention for the wines. They could have there is some bottles cost a lot of money, etc. There is some rarity. Okay, I understand that until a certain level, but I think for us, we are not medicine. We don't save life. We give pleasure to the people. So I think it's really important that okay, we are passionate. We could have the making the champagne and the selling are useful. That it will help us for the next investment to continue to increase the aging on the lease, etc. But for me, it's really important that my kids, they say, okay, we are farmers. We are not work star with the winemaker who travel all over the world all the time and going in the big restaurant and etc. Our work is to be in the vines, in the winery, working with the nature. So that's the first point. So this is what we try to educate the kids like that. Then educate the education of the kids that the world it's a lot of diversity, and I love the diversity and meeting the different people, the different culture. And today to see that our champagne, how much they could match with many different type of food and different type of culture. For me, this is probably what I'm the most proud of. Here today, during this week in São Paulo, with all the food, with the very good meat, with the ceviche, with all the things, that's a perfect match. But you are going to Seoul, in Korea, with the spicy food, with the vegetable fermented, it's also a good pairing. So for me, that's what I really like. And I think after the last point, it's, I hope, and I think the kids are now, they are quite happy they would like to take over. Not yet, I'm still want to work and to be very independent. But, you know, they are, it's vintage 12 and 13, my kids. So 11, 13 years old. So no pressure, no rush.
Right.
But for me, what I'm not stressed is not necessarily the climate change, is not the economic situation, is not this kind of thing, is probably the societal changement, the evolution of the society, that you have a part of the people who think they don't have so much interest with alcohol, they don't have so much interest with the culture and the history about the terroir for France, for Europe, etc. So this is why for us, champagne will always have to be a very spending a lot of time, especially with the new generation, to try to not convince, to try to explain them that there is always the people behind the bottles, and there is some culture that if you like the wines, maybe also you could like the history, the story, and the people and the personality behind it. For me, that's for me what I really hope it will continue for the future.
I really like that answer, especially because obviously a big part of my job is talking to the younger generation.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's very interesting to me because I'm also a triathlete, so I'm part of this new generation that wants to drink less and wants to be healthy and wants to be lean, but you know, still has wine as an important part of my life. So there is balance, like in wine. There's balance in life, you know.
No, it could match, and the life it's a bit more complex than just to say yes or no. You could have a mix, and for me the life is full of colors. It's full of diversity and possibility. Of course, the extreme, you know, in France, I think it was in the years 70, the consumption of alcohol was almost 60 liters per people during a year. Today we are below 20 liters. So it's a quite important decreasing, but is drinking less, but drinking better.
Right.
It's like with the meat, is with many things, in fact. So this is really what I'm sure that, and you know, also Champagne, it's that's not me who said that, it's some journalists. They said that Champagne is one of the most dynamic region in the world. About the Champagne always arrive to adapt. And today we are arriving at the moment that people, they know that Champagne it's a wine for aperitif, but they like also more and more the idea that the Champagne it's also a wine that could stay on the table to go to play with food. And I think it's also the next evolution. And for that, I'm super confident as well that the June generation could enjoy a bottle of wine, not necessarily just with oyster, but with some tacos, with some just a simple and honest food that will be a good match.
I agree fully. Do you want to leave one last message for the people in Brazil, the viewers in Brazil that are going to see this video?
What could be the message? That but first, I'm really enjoyed. That's my first time in Brazil, and I'm in very good hands and with the team, and I'm super happy. And again, super. I really like for me the way of life, and that's I think it's a very good spirit with also the wine from Champagne. Maybe if I understood correctly, the Champagne growers is something quite recently for the larger people in Brazil.
Right.
They don't have to be stressful. I don't know what to choose. Just enjoy it. No pressure. If you think that this kind of wine match with this type of food, try it. Maybe they have to get advice from people like you, some journalists, etc. But the most important is that you get some pleasure. And I think with the Champagne growers is that you have a lot of different wines, you have a lot of different personality. So maybe the problem is that they will have to taste a bit more. Just to find this is the wine that I love and I will drink every week. If you want to do that, okay. For me, this is not necessarily what I'm saying, but I respect. But with the Champagne grower, you will never stop to discover. And this is, I think, what I like the most.
I agree, and I always say this as well. If you don't know what to drink, choose Champagne because it's the most versatile wine. Obviously, it is a wine. It's the most versatile wine, and it's delicious. And I want to drink Champagne in the morning. When I'm sad, when I'm happy, you know, it's just something that I'm a huge fan. Obviously, I go to Champagne quite a bit, and it's something that I encourage people to try more because there's a world of opportunity in Champagne that people don't even know about, and sometimes only know about one or two brands and don't know about grower champagnes. And once you start trying them, you start going down the rabbit hole, and you're like, this never ends. You know, there's always something new and something exciting to try in Champagne. So that's how I see it.
And you know what? I mean, La Hertefrère Frère alone is not is anything. But more we are together, the growers, more we are stronger. And I think it's pretty good. Also, like Anima Vinum, the portfolio they arrived to create, what they present, they show the difference between the different terroirs, the different variety, the different type of vine growing. We are all passionate people, but working with different direction, different details. And I think this is what, for my part, it's what they love the most. The people, when they arrive in the shop and, I don't know this bottle. I want to take this. I want to discover. And I think that that's really something, again, giving a lot of pleasure. So, yeah.
I agree. Well, and for the people that are going to watch this, you can find all of La Hertefrère's wines in Brazil at Anima Vinum online, but also in the store in São Paulo. Right?
And I think it will be some Petit Melier arriving in the near future.
Okay, I'm going to have to get my allocation very soon.
Great.
Man, thank you so much for your time. It's been a huge pleasure, and I really hope you enjoy your time in Brazil. Yeah. Next time you come, I will make sure to be there. This time I was completely drowned in work, but also I go to Champagne quite a bit. So next time I'll make sure to.
Yeah, for sure, you are more than welcome to have a look at the domain, and for sure the next time I'm coming to Brazil, it will be with family and spending a bit more time, etc. I don't know yet when it will be, but for sure it will be, I hope, in the near future. Yeah. Thanks a lot, and thanks for all the works you do for the wine. Thanks.
It's a huge pleasure. It's a huge pleasure.
Merci.
Bye.
Ciao. Salut.